Roads, and we are all the way up to tour stop number 5 on our 2022 Great American Supercomputing Roadshow. I'm here at Los Alamos National Lab with guess who? Irene Walters. How are you?
I'm fine, Dan. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So can you tell us a little bit about the lab and its mission?
So Los Alamos is an FFRDC. We're the oldest FFRDC.
FFRDC.
Federally funded research and development
The
center.
oldest one.
The oldest one. We're more than 75 years old.
Wow.
And we're large and growing. We grew more than 1,000 people this year. So
Wow.
we're up to more than 12,000. Our mission remains unchanged. We're a national nuclear security lab. We have a very broad mission, and that mission encompasses the safety and security of the U.S. National Nuclear Stockpile, but it also encompasses other areas of national security and overlaps into the science space as well.
Highly critical things that you're working on here.
Yes.
So I'm imagining that you have some compute resources here.
We do indeed.
Can you tell us a little bit about those?
So we're actually in the process right now of installing and bringing up our latest system, which is ultimately going to be called Crossroads, and we're in the first phase now, which is Tycho. And this is an Intel-based processor, and it will be dedicated. It's in the open now, but when it's fully accepted, its mission will be for our weapons program.
Okay.
But we also have a number of large...
Well, real quick, how big is Crossroads going to be?
So,
can you tell us?
So Trinity is our current system, and just to give you some notion of performance, which is really what we're going to judge it on, we were able on Trinity a few years ago to successfully demonstrate a simulation code, that one of our really critical simulation codes that ran for 6 months on all of Trinity.
6 months.
And we're hoping to get that down to 6 weeks on Crossroads.
Wow.
But that won't happen this year.
Okay, it takes a little time.
It takes a little time.
Cable things up.
Yes. So
that would be impressive. That's a huge step forward.
It's a huge step forward, and it's bringing along other innovations. We're going to be, for example, using gray water completely for the first time to cool it. Yes.
Gray water?
Gray water.
That is interesting because one of the things you have to worry about in liquid cooling is making sure that your liquid remains pristine and you're not starting an aquarium in there.
and there were some experiments along those lines that have been run at other laboratories, which we benefited from the learning of that.
Yes.
And those were really largely temperature induced. So we'll be running at that same higher temperature. But the gray water is actually better for the machine than potable water because it doesn't have as many chemicals in it.
Who knew? Okay.
Yes. So it's a big upgrade to the infrastructure, the computing infrastructure, and reduces our use of water in a really important time for the state and the country.
Very good. Will this system have any accelerators in it?
This system does not have accelerators in it. We do have currently a system in our open space, Chicoma, that has NVIDIA A100s, and we are planning a much larger system immediately subsequent to Crossroads called Venado. that will be very
highly accelerated.
Highly accelerated. And of course, we'll be using El Capitan when that comes online.
And that's going to be significantly
yes.
accelerated
So
as well.
we really have a kind of a very mixed environment. And it depends a little bit on the application code that's running, what's more suitable.
Does the lab get into other accelerators other than the traditional GPUs, into FPGAs or ASICs or anything?
We do, and I'll not talk about those in any depth, but we have test beds where we're looking at DPUs and other types of accelerators in the small, so we can examine them.
You're looking at everything.
We're looking at everything, yes, and of course it's not just the processor; it's memory is as important as ever,
storage,
and memory interface and storage. Yep.
Absolutely. And are you doing much in the way of machine learning?
We're doing a lot in machine learning, both at the fundamental level and the applied level. And so our lab-directed R&D in IS&T, in Information Science and Technology, has a major focus on quantum as well as AI. And again, both foundational areas and application. And we're clearly at the front end of AI. Most of the work in the applied space is machine learning or deep learning right now.
Sure.
But we're looking at the full spectrum from the fundamental mathematics. We've been working in tensor mathematics, for example, through our LDRD program. We recently won an R&D 100 award on that. But we're also looking at uncertainty associated with machine learning, because one of the areas in which we're relatively unique is that much of our use of AI and machine learning will be in high consequence decision making.
Yes, some of the highest consequence decision making.
Yes.
And it's interesting in that I did an interview with the folks at Idaho National Lab who are working on very high consequence things themselves. And they found that the nuclear industry and their researchers are approaching it cautiously, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Well, I think we're in the beginning of a long road.
Yes.
And so there is a lot of low-hanging fruit. And it is true that in the early stages, we will be focused on things like physics-informed or physics-constrained machine learning.
Okay.
So that we benefit from our fundamental understanding of physics rather than just relying solely on the AI or machine learning techniques.
I think that makes a lot of sense to go a little slow on this, particularly with the consequential things that you're doing. Well, shifting gears a little bit, there's some new things that we're going to be hearing about. We have been hearing about, like CXL, different ways to put systems together. Is this something the lab has been looking at all?
I don't think we've been looking at it deeply yet. We're aware of what is going on in
the
this
lab
space.
sees all, knows all, is aware of all.
No, I can't claim that. But we do try through our collaborations, our engagement with other laboratories, with universities, with industry. We try to have very good sensing and then in some areas explore. So we haven't gone into that area deeply.
But it's on your radar somewhere.
It is on our radar.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. When is Exascale coming to this lab?
So I think for us, first of all, as I said, we are and will be using DOE and NSA's Exascale systems.
That's what everybody's been saying.
Yes.
And I'm wondering when they're going to be listening to this and going, the hell you are. We need it for us too.
Well, but
But they are shared resources.
They are shared resources, and frankly, in the Exascale computing project under DOE, our largest presence has actually been on the application side. So we've been intimately involved in creating the applications and the algorithms that make it suitable for Exascale systems, and in particular the GPU flavor of Exascale that we'll be seeing in this first wave of Exascale systems. So both those techniques and the flexibility to be able to have applications run on a variety of systems is something that we've participated fully in. So we will be running on those systems, and many of the applications that we've helped develop will be running even if we ourselves are not running. But I think for ourselves, as I mentioned with respect to Crossroads, there are certain characteristics of the problem that that represent the challenges that we're facing, that mean that running those problems at higher fidelity in shorter time frames to inform decisions is really how we gauge the power of the systems. And so while the Exascale is really a clear nomenclature, it isn't the one that we use for choosing.
You're not in the game just to get up on the list and have the fourth or fifth Exascale system. I mean, that's not what any of the labs really
and
into it for.
some problems are amenable to those approaches, but ours tend to be a little bit more sensitive to the memory access pattern and the time that it takes to do those. And because we want to scale, we are facing more complex problems that are multi-physics, multi-scale, where we must have to examine things at the very fine scale, but then we also have to examine them at a large scale with other models integrated. And that tends to have relevance not just for our weapons mission, but climate is another supreme example of where you need to be able to run at multi-scale, you need multi-physics, and high consequence decision making.
Yes.
And so we are involved in many of those areas, and I think some of those clearly overlap into the security space.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, shifting gears a little bit, what are you most excited about seeing or hearing at SC22? Anything in particular?
Not anything as much as anyone. It's been a long time.
Yes.
The HPC community is quite international.
Yes.
And it's been a long time since we've seen our colleagues nationally, let alone internationally. And I find that some of our information is stale, and looking at videos or on a WebEx is
doesn't get you there.
No. So I think having conversations about the future with colleagues that we haven't been able to see.
And those hallway conversations, those hallway contacts that you make can lead to so much.
Yes, so that's really what I'm looking forward to. I'm sure there will be there are a lot of technical issues I've teed up and questions I have for colleagues in other countries, but I'm really looking forward to that.
I think it's going to be great. Do you want to ride? I mean, I'll be there in 3 days. I've got the front seat if you want to ride. We have to stop at Sandia first, then Amarillo, because I've got a hotel booked there, and then we'll be in Dallas. So I'm driving there.
What day are you leaving?
I'm leaving today, actually, after this interview.
Well, I have to go to New York first and then back.
That's too bad. Funny, no one takes me up on that offer. I wonder why. Something to think about. So, as we're wrapping up here, this has been a big and interesting question for everybody. I want you to assume that you're addressing everybody in the HPC vendor ecosystem. What do you need 3 years down the road? What do you most want? What would help?
So there's not one thing, of course.
No, of course, no.
I want it all. But I do think as we're both entering the space of trying to have higher fidelity models with known uncertainty, the looming issue that I mentioned earlier of memory access. Many of our problems have irregular memory access. If I look at what's coming in the AI and machine learning, also very data and potentially memory intensive, the industry has made progress on so many fronts. We're talking at 1-2 nanometers now. That's something I couldn't have imagined.
Stacked 3D layers.
Stacked 3D. So I can't complain on any of those fronts.
You could complain a little bit. We can complain about memory bandwidth.
Yes, the memory bandwidth, which, even in the very early days of Cray, there was always great concern about memory bandwidth and always looking carefully at
And
that.
memory bandwidth per core
Exactly.
is way down.
So I think that that's an area where I'd like attention and discussion, engagement with us. Another area that I'm concerned about is as I look at major scientific instruments, including computers, I'm looking at our collective carbon footprint. And I think the power needs both for AI, because it looks like that's not going to improve our carbon footprint, our power usage. So I'd really like to engage with industry in that space. I think cooling technology has really progressed magnificently in terms of air to water to
Two-phase in some
yes,
places.
exactly, and warm water cooling.
Warm water, gray water.
Yes, so
Good thing.
I think that's come a long way, but some attention now to our footprint on the power side would do us all well.
I had someone bring up, and I believe it was Idaho, that they were asking that the vendors standardize some of this cooling stuff, the connections, the flow rates, the pumps, that sort of thing.
I think I'm not smart enough to say whether the time to do that is now, because there is obviously this trade-off with do you standardize or do you innovate?
Yeah, that's
And
always the trade-off. Yes.
And so I'm not smart enough to know whether we've reached a level of maturity that now we can standardize. So I couldn't comment on that. I do note that specific vendors are in many cases now introducing more standardization in the hardware so that you can upgrade and preserve the cabinet and the cooling and everything. So
That's good.
Yeah, that may be indicative of a maturing in that space.
And would it kill you to keep the same processor socket for a couple of generations? Right?
I'm sure there's another slide.
I know there is, but would it kill you to do that?
Yes. So I think those are all good points. And I think on our side, understanding where to put our energy and research, as I mentioned, perhaps exploring algorithms that AI algorithms which reduce data requirements might be a contribution that we could also make to that community discussion and engagement.
That would be important. That would be a big step forward. So, final question. What excites you about the future of supercomputing?
Well, one of the things that excites me is that just when I think we might be at a dead end, like we all thought with Moore's Law, you get to peek around the corner And lo and behold, the future has more options.
The future is still
and
there.
it's still bright and still dynamic.
Yeah.
And so that part really excites me. And in addition to the power, there are areas of materials that haven't been explored yet. Is a next phase using quantum as an accelerator within HPC? And the other bigger thing that excites me is we're returning from the era of commodities, and we're now in this era of specialization.
Yes.
And I think that offers, again, opens a new horizon of opportunity, and I'm excited about that.
And the pendulum is still swinging towards
It's-
specialization.
Yes.
I mean, there must be, last time I counted, maybe 18 months ago, there are probably 50 different accelerators out there in development from the majors and from startups you've never heard of.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's not going to slacken anytime soon, I don't think.
And then the other thing that I don't want to neglect, that's all very technology focused, but as I look at the postdocs, the early career people coming into Los Alamos, they are doing things that I could never dream of.
On their phone.
And their ideas are really stimulating us. So that part excites me about the future too.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really
thank you,
appreciate
dear.
it. Thank you for being stop number 5. And we will see you at SC.
We'll see you at SC, even if I don't drive there
Even
with
if you don't drive there. It's a comfortable car. I'm just saying. And you can bring a mixtape in. Sure. Slide that into the cassette or the 8-track. I've got both. Well, okay. Another offer spurned. But thank you for watching, and thank you, Irene, and we'll see you at the next stop.
500 miles